At Christmas dinner, my parents handed my brother a check for $10,000 and told me, "Losers don't get awards. You don't deserve anything." My brother laughed and I stood up, replied, "Got it," and walked off into the night. That was 4 years ago. 3 weeks ago, I made a move they weren't ready for. Today, they left dozens of messages screaming, "Answer the call." I never really thought I'd be the kind of person who cuts off their own family, but I guess I should have seen it coming. Looking back, the signs were always there, buried beneath the forced smiles and the constant, careful performance of being a happy family. But if you told me that one Christmas would be the final straw, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Growing up, my family was the type that cared way too much about appearances. My mom, Sandra, was the kind of woman who would clean the entire house from top to bottom before guests came over, just to keep up the illusion of perfection. My dad, Richard, didn't say much most of the time, but he had a way of letting you know exactly what he thought of you with just a look. And then there was Jake, my younger brother by 2 years, the golden child, the favorite. Jake was always the one who got the attention, the praise, the endless encouragement. I was the practical one, which I later realized was just a nice way of saying I was boring. Jake, on the other hand, was the heart of the family. He was the one they talked about at family gatherings, the one they showed off to friends. Meanwhile, I just tried to stay out of the way, convinced that maybe if I didn't cause any trouble, they'd notice me too. But they didn't. Not really. This all came to a head one Christmas. I remember the text in the family group chat like it was yesterday. Mom wanted us all to come early, family time before dinner. So I showed up, trying to tell myself it wouldn't be like every other year, that maybe this time would be different. But it was already off. Jake was pacing around the living room, talking too loudly on his phone, something about a big opportunity he was working on. My parents were in the kitchen, whispering, and my mom kept throwing me this weird, strained smile whenever I caught her eye. Jake's fiancée at the time, Ashley, was setting the table, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. My Aunt Laura and my cousin Nicole were on the couch, scrolling through TikTok without saying a word. Jake's voice cut through the awkward silence like a knife. "You know, some people need to step up if they actually want to make something of themselves," he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. My mom chuckled, too loud, too forced. My dad just grinned like he was in on some joke I wasn't part of. Dinner was tense. The food was good, I'll give my mom that. But there was this heavy, uncomfortable feeling hanging over everything. Jake kept tapping his fork on his plate like he was waiting for something, while my dad kept sneaking looks at his phone under the table. Finally, my mom stood up, her smile too wide, too practiced. "I just want to take a moment to recognize some real achievements in this family," she began, her voice a little too cheerful. Jake immediately straightened up, a smug little smile already playing on his lips. My stomach twisted. I don't know why, but I already knew where this was going. Mom went on about hard work, dedication, being a role model, classic lines I'd heard 100 times before. And then she pulled out this envelope, holding it out to Jake with both hands like it was some kind of sacred gift. Jake opened it, glanced at the check inside, and laughed. He held it up for everyone to see. "Guess it pays to be the successful one in the family," he said, practically glowing. Ashley squealed, hugging him. My dad clapped, leaning back in his chair with that proud, self-satisfied smile I'd seen too many times. I just stared at my plate, the knot in my stomach twisting tighter. $10,000. They gave him $10,000 just for, what? For being their favorite? Then my mom looked at me. Her smile faded. The room seemed to go cold. "Well, some people in this family don't get rewards," she said, her voice sharp. "Failures don't get rewards." I couldn't even look up. I didn't need to see their faces to know what was coming next. My dad's voice was like ice. "You never finished anything you started. You wasted your chances." Jake laughed, leaning over to nudge me. "Maybe if you actually tried for once." I felt the heat rising in my face. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom didn't even hesitate. "It's the truth. You never did what we asked. You never lived up to your potential. Maybe you'll finally get it now," my dad added, his tone almost bored. Jake leaned back, grinning, waving the check in my face. "Don't let the door hit you." I didn't even realize I was walking away until I was already at the door. My mom's voice followed me, something about growing up, about facing reality. But I didn't stop. I grabbed my coat, stepped out into the freezing night air, and I just kept walking. The cold stung my face, but I barely felt it. My phone buzzed, probably my aunt or maybe even Jake already gloating about the check. I didn't look. I didn't care. All I could think about was how this wasn't just about the check. It was everything. Every holiday, every family dinner, every time I'd been the second choice, the backup plan, the disappointment. That was the last time I spent Christmas with them. Or any holiday. And honestly, I didn't even regret it. Not then and not now. Walking out of that house on Christmas night felt like tearing off a bandage, painful but necessary. The cold air bit at my face as I made my way down the street, hands shoved deep into my coat pockets. I didn't know where I was going, but anywhere was better than staying there. I ended up crashing at my friend Alex's place. He didn't ask too many questions, just took one look at my face and handed me a blanket. That's one thing about Alex, he's never been one for forced sympathy. We spent the night drinking cheap beer and watching whatever trash TV was on, which was probably the best therapy I could have asked for at the time. The next few days were a blur. My parents didn't text. Not even a "where are you?" Nothing. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. I kept checking my phone out of habit, half hoping, half dreading a message from them. But there was nothing except a single text from my Aunt Laura telling me I should try to understand how your mother feels. Yeah, sure. Jake, on the other hand, did text. A meme about crying in the club followed by a message saying I was being dramatic. I didn't bother responding. I just blocked him. In fact, I went through my contacts and blocked almost everyone on that side of the family. The silence that followed was almost peaceful. Living with Alex wasn't exactly comfortable. His place was a cramped one-bedroom that always smelled faintly of takeout, and the couch was about 6 inches too short for me. But it was mine, even if only temporarily. I picked up some extra shifts at my part-time job and started saving what I could. It wasn't much, but it was something. A way to start building a life that didn't revolve around them. Weeks turned into months, and I started to forget the sharp, burning humiliation I'd felt that night. Or at least, I convinced myself I did. I even got a small studio apartment, a dingy little box with thin walls and a heater that only worked half the time. But it was mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was just filling space in someone else's life. Then I heard about Jake's wedding. Not from my parents, of course. No, a mutual friend sent me a screenshot of Jake's Instagram post, some over-the-top engagement photo, all smiles and filters. "So blessed," he captioned it. I stared at the screen, a hollow feeling in my chest. They didn't even bother telling me. Not that I would have gone. A few weeks later, I got another text from my aunt saying my mom was upset that I wasn't planning to attend the wedding. Like I was supposed to just show up and pretend nothing had happened. Like I was supposed to smile and watch them celebrate Jake, the golden child, while I sat in the corner, forgotten. I ignored it. Blocked her too. It was around that time I started to hear whispers of trouble back home. Little things like how my parents were talking about refinancing the house or how Jake's business ventures weren't going as planned. I didn't care. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. Then one day I got a text from a random number. It was my mom. "Can you help your brother out? He's having some financial issues with the wedding plans. Just a small loan. We know you've been saving." I stared at the message, letting the anger boil up inside me. I didn't even respond. Just blocked that number too. Then another text came, from Jake this time, trying to guilt-trip me, calling me selfish, telling me I was being petty. I blocked him too. I knew then that I'd made the right choice leaving. They didn't care about me. They never did. I was just an extra, the backup option, the one they called only when they needed something. But I wasn't going to be their backup anymore. I focused on myself. I worked long hours, took on any extra shifts I could, saved money. I didn't spend much, no fancy dinners, no new clothes, just the basics. I wasn't trying to prove anything to them. I just wanted to be able to look at my life and not see their shadows hanging over everything. Months passed. Jake got married. I wasn't invited, but I saw the photos, smiling faces, perfect decorations, my parents beaming with pride. I wondered how much they'd paid for it. How much they'd given him to make it all perfect. But the perfect image didn't last. I started hearing from mutual friends that Jake's business was going under. His wife left him less than a year after the wedding, and my parents were struggling with debts they'd taken on to help him. It was like watching a house of cards fall in slow motion. And the thing was, I didn't feel bad for them. Not even a little. One day, I was scrolling through a real estate app, I don't even remember why, when I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. My parents' house, listed as pre-foreclosure. I clicked on it, staring at the familiar rooms, the perfectly manicured lawn, now looking a little neglected. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part of me wanted to smash my phone. But mostly, I just felt nothing. They were losing everything. And I was finally free. Seeing the house listed for pre-foreclosure should have made me feel something: satisfaction, maybe, or even pity. But all I felt was this strange, cold detachment. Like I was watching a movie I'd seen 100 times before. My parents' perfect life was crumbling, and they had no idea that I knew. I started checking the listing obsessively. I'd scroll through the photos, recognizing every room, every piece of furniture, and wonder how long they'd managed to keep pretending everything was fine. Their social media profiles were still full of old, carefully staged photos, mom's proud family portraits, dad's happy family updates, but the house told a different story. Then, one day, the listing changed. Pre-foreclosure became a notice of auction. Something clicked inside me. I don't know if it was revenge, justice, or just the thought of finally having control over something that had always made me feel powerless. But I knew I had to buy that house. Not because I wanted it, but because I wanted them to know they'd lost it to me. I spent days figuring out how to make it happen. I wasn't stupid. I knew if they saw my name on the paperwork, they'd do everything they could to fight it. So I set up an LLC, something generic and forgettable, and funneled every spare dollar I'd saved into it. Years of living cheap, taking extra shifts, skipping out on luxuries, it was all going to pay off. I found a local real estate agent, told him I was an investor looking for good deals, and had him handle everything. My name wouldn't appear on any of the documents. As far as my parents were concerned, I was just another faceless buyer. The auction day came faster than I expected. I logged in from my tiny apartment, watching the bids roll in. I didn't even have to bid immediately. At first, it was just a few low offers, probably from other bargain hunters. Then, a name popped up that made me laugh out loud. Jake's old gamer tag. Of course, he was trying to save the house. Maybe mom and dad had convinced him he could be the hero, the savior of the family legacy. But I knew how this would go. He was always about flash, never about substance. Jake's bids were aggressive at first, jumping up by hundreds, then thousands. But I'd done the math. I knew exactly how high he could go, and I had more than enough to push him out. When his bids started to slow, I made my move, one solid, final offer. Silence followed. And then I won. Just like that. The next few days were a waiting game. I knew it wouldn't take long for them to figure out they'd lost the house, and I knew the phone calls would start soon. But I wasn't prepared for how fast they'd spiral. First, my mom called. I didn't answer. Then Jake texted, "Dude, did you hear what happened? The house is gone." Mom's freaking out. I left him on read. A day later, my dad texted me. Just one word: coward. Jake tried calling, then switched to WhatsApp, then sent a long, rambling voice message about how family was supposed to stick together, how they needed me. It was almost impressive how he could go from demanding to begging without even pausing. Then the story changed. Mom started calling me too, leaving these desperate voicemails about how the family was falling apart, how they needed me to come home. But the thing was, they never really wanted me. They just wanted what I could give them. I let the calls pile up. Voicemail after voicemail, text after text. It didn't take long before the desperation turned to anger. My dad sent another message, this one longer: "If you had any decency, you'd help. But you've always been selfish. This just proves it." Selfish. That word used to cut deep. But not anymore. Then, about a week after the auction, Jake showed up at my apartment. I wasn't surprised, I'd half expected it. He pounded on the door, and I watched him through the peephole for a few seconds before opening it. "You need to talk to me. We're losing the house. I don't know what to do." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "And what do you want me to do about it?" Jake's face twisted, going from desperate to furious in an instant. "Help us. It's your family too. Is it?" I asked, the words coming out colder than I intended. Because the last time I checked, I was just the screw-up. The one who never finished anything. The one who didn't deserve anything. His jaw tightened. That was just mom and dad being dramatic. They didn't mean it, didn't they? He had nothing to say to that. I started to close the door, but he shoved his foot in the gap. "You can't just walk away. You don't get to leave us like this." "I didn't leave you," I said. "You pushed me out. You made it clear I wasn't part of the family. So figure it out without me." Jake stared at me, and for a second I thought he might try something. But then he pulled his foot back, muttered something I didn't catch, and stormed off. The calls kept coming for a while, but eventually they stopped. I heard through a friend that my parents had moved into a smaller place, a cramped little rental across town. Jake was crashing with some friends, still trying to play the big shot. And me? I still had the house. I didn't even want it, didn't plan to live in it. But knowing it was mine and that they knew it too, that was enough. I thought buying the house would be the end of it. That knowing they'd lost everything to someone they'd written off would be enough. But it turns out the fallout was just getting started. The calls didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. My mom went from desperate to angry, leaving voicemails where she screamed about how I'd ruined them. How I was a selfish, ungrateful son who didn't know what family meant. My dad's messages were shorter, colder. You have no honor. You're a disgrace. Jake's texts were the worst. At first, he was trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was destroying the family legacy. Then he switched to threats. You're gonna regret this. I'll find out who bought the house and make them pay. It was almost funny, but I didn't respond to any of them. I let the messages pile up, a constant reminder of everything I'd walked away from. Then they showed up at my door. I heard the pounding first, relentless, angry. I checked the peephole. It was Jake, and behind him, my parents. My mom was crying. Mascara streaked down her face, while my dad stood with his arms crossed, glaring at the door. Open up. I know you're in there. Jake's voice was muffled but furious. We need to talk. I almost didn't answer. Part of me wanted to just let them scream into the void. But another part, the part that was tired of running, decided to end this. I unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough to see them clearly. What do you want? My mom tried to push past me, but I blocked her. Please, we just need to understand. How could you do this to us? Do what? Buy a house. I asked, keeping my voice calm. Jake shoved forward. You know exactly what you did. You stole it out from under us. I leaned against the doorframe. Stole it? It was an auction. I outbid you. That's how it works. My dad stepped forward, his voice low and venomous. You think you're clever? You think this is some kind of victory? I think it's what happens when you treat someone like they're nothing for long enough. Eventually, they stop caring. My mom started sobbing again, clutching at Jake's arm. We're family. You don't do this to family. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Family? The same family that told me I was a failure? That I didn't deserve anything? That literally gave Jake $10,000 just to rub it in my face. That was different, my mom shouted. Jake worked hard. He earned that. Worked hard at what? I shot back. At being your favorite? At making me feel worthless? Jake's face twisted. You're just bitter. You've always been jealous. Maybe I was. But now I'm just done. I started to close the door, but my dad shoved his hand in the gap. We can fix this. Just give the house back. We'll figure something out. Fix what? Your image? Your perfect little fantasy? It's gone, Dad. It was always a lie. He didn't move his hand. You'll regret this. No, I said, meeting his eyes. You will. I pushed his hand out, closed the door, and locked it. They kept pounding for a while, but eventually, they gave up. I watched through the peephole as they walked away. My mom sobbing, Jake cursing under his breath, and my dad walking stiffly, like he was holding in everything he wanted to say. But it wasn't over. They tried everything. They called my workplace, trying to get me fired. They messaged mutual friends, telling them I was mentally unstable. They even posted online, painting me as a traitor, a heartless monster who'd ruined his own family. I didn't respond to any of it. I just kept living my life. I changed my number, blocked their accounts, made my social media private. The silence was a relief. Over time, the drama died down. Jake moved out of town, last I heard. My parents settled into a smaller rental, still pretending they were better off than they were. Mutual friends stopped bringing them up. Even my aunt, who tried to guilt-trip me in the beginning, eventually stopped texting. But I didn't forget. Sometimes I'd drive by the house. My house now, just to remind myself that it was real. That I'd taken back something they tried to make me believe I didn't deserve. And maybe that was the best part. Not the house itself, but the fact that I'd proven to myself that I didn't need them. That I was enough even if they never saw it. So here I am, still in my little apartment, still figuring out life. But without their shadows hanging over everything. I don't know if they ever understood what they did, or why I did what I did. I doubt they ever will. They'll probably keep telling themselves I was the problem. That I was ungrateful, selfish, heartless. But the truth is, I just got tired of pretending. I got tired of being the family punching bag, the backup option, the one who never measured up. So I made my choice. And I don't regret it.